Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. Hi, I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Island families. This evening's edition will host Legislative Issues with Jim Parisi, where we bring the legislature into your living room. We hope you enjoy this edition of Legislative Issues and Labor Vision.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision, where we bring the General Assembly right into your living room. My name is James Parisi. I'm a field representative with the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and I am your host this evening. This week and all month long, we're going to be concentrating on issues that are appearing on the November ballot. One of the ballot questions, ballot question number 6, relates to mass transit. And who better than talking about mass transit issues than the leader of the American Transportation Union? Paul Harrington, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you very much.
Why don't you start by letting us know quickly what question 6 is on the November ballot?
Question 6 is a referendum vote to acquire $35 million upfront seed money from the state of Rhode Island to support and finance 2 new hubs that they want to build in downtown Providence.
So right now, the main transportation hub is, or should I say was, Kennedy Plaza. And they're looking to do some major construction downtown?
Absolutely. Kennedy Plaza right now is in the middle of a revitalization project. But this is about moving our public transit system, the infrastructure and the amenities into the 21st century for all the Rhode Islanders that dedicate and depend on mass transit.
Perhaps before we talk about the hubs themselves, let's talk about mass transit for a minute. Why don't you give our viewers a sense on how dependent Rhode Islanders are to using the mass transit system in our state?
You know, people are usually pleasantly surprised by the number of Rhode Islanders that depend on our mass transit, either by want or need, in the business communities that we serve. We give roughly 60,000 rides a day on our transportation system and our public transit, mass transit system.
That's a huge number in and of itself, isn't it?
It is. As a year, we run around a little over 20 million rides per year, Jim.
And for a state of 1 million people, that means a lot of people are relying on mass transit on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Our system has been improved by our new CEO. The service and the frequencies have been improved, so riders can have more of a convenient ride. And the end product to that is, and we really in desperate need of it, Kennedy Plaza has been the transportation hub for over 100 years. For our public transit system, and it's time that we move in, and with the governor's vision and him moving this bond forward to acquire a $35 million state share of a possible federal funded 2 new hubs, one on the east side of the city of Providence and one on the west side of the city of Providence.
I read recently that there's some issues about doing some kind of light rail or trolley system in Providence. Is that any way related to these transportation hubs? In the future, they could be. They could be connected. Right now, the talk of the light rail would run from Thayer Street, up on the tunnel, down through Kennedy Plaza, out toward the east side of the city, and eventually end up near Rhode Island Hospital. But it would go through that new land, which has been now allocated because of the 195 project, and has great opportunity. And that's another thing people don't realize or understand, is that mass transit, for every dollar they spend on public transit, there is a return of almost $4. So it's economically smart for a state, and especially the state of Rhode Island, to invest in a better public transit system, even if it's facilities and amenities for its passengers, because there is an economic growth and a value to that. I know you mentioned that Kennedy Plaza is being redone. Where are the riders being located temporarily while the renovation's going on and before this hub becomes a reality? The
riders are unfortunately been, the plaza's been blocked off and completely ripped down and started over almost. And they've had temporary bus stops all around Down City. to give the passengers the opportunity to ride buses. There is some inconvenience because of the distances. RIPTA is a little bit of a disadvantage because instead of being centralized in one spot, Jim, they're unfortunately spread out citywide.
And then once a new hub is put together, assuming this bond goes through, it's all going to be located in one particular place. Why don't you let our viewers know what the plan looks like? Where physically are these two hubs going to be located, and which one's the main hub?
Right now, our transportation system's always been centralized like a spider web. And Kennedy Plaza has been the center of that web for, like I said earlier, over 100 years. And the vision of the two hubs is going to be one, adjacent and on the north side of the train station. That hub will be a complete a building that would house all the bus berths. It would have security, lighting, information, bathrooms, and obviously it would be out of the weather elements. That is a very complicated hub. It will be built over the tracks and the Amtrak tracks, and again, adjacent to the train station. But to have a mobility center like that, a state-of-the-art mobility center, is really 21st century thinking. It's about time to get there, where people can take buses to that hub. They can get on trains to go to either Boston or New York. There's obviously service from that hub that will bring them out to the airport, and it connects with the that side of the city. Yeah. The other hub is on the other side of the city, where they would like to build a garage behind the Garrahy Jiu-Jitsu complex. That garage, they wanted to allocate all the street level, is what we're hoping to get, is all the street level would be considered our second hub of our system. If not, then they can do the exterior of the garage and allocate that space. We're hoping that we get the interior street level to make an additional second hub. Kennedy Plaza at that point in time, Jim, interestingly, would become a super hub, or more or less a super stop, feeding everybody into the city that needs to get off, but not the hub anymore, more of a super stop for the downtown Providence. You
represent bus drivers and others who work for RIPTA. Why is the creation of these hubs important to you and your members?
It's going to be, again, the investment in infrastructure, and most importantly, the amenities that will be achieved there. There will be restrooms for not only the passengers, but for my bus drivers. There will be a sense of a very safe element in enclosed infrastructure, enclosed hub over, especially on the next to the train station. We've never had that opportunity as bus drivers. We've had a building down Kennedy Plaza that can be utilized, but to actually have a building that where our buses will be able to enter from its own ramp, be able to park at a berth, it's going to be a huge advantage to not only my members, the people I represent, but also the 60,000 rides or the people that we give service to.
Do you see the state's investment in these transportation hubs being a way to actually increase ridership with RIPTA?
I believe so. I think that it's going to have a big impact on people having faith in our mass transit system, and to encourage additional riders to start taking the bus and to utilize our public transit system to get to and from work.
I know the 195 relocation project has opened up a lot of space, and I've been following the issue of the building of that the parking garage by the Garrahy courthouse. I know there's right now a lot of potential, but there's not a whole lot known about what new businesses are going to be relocating down there. How do you think this new satellite hub plays into the whole redevelopment of that area?
Well, this satellite hub over on the Garrahy's section of town will spur economic growth. Because of the number of people that will either board, right, or exit at that hub, it'll create a variety of opportunities for coffee shops, dry cleaners, restaurants. It will definitely be a positive on that side of the city, have a positive impact on that side of the city.
So in terms of what the group looks like in terms of supporting this, obviously we could see where your members would be interested in this hub. Are there any other organizations that are weighing in support of question number 6, which is going to appear on the ballot in November?
Jim, that's a great question. Actually, the response from the private and the public sector has been huge. There is a coalition that's been formed and moving forward. The number of people signing on as either partners or supporters, I believe we're up to 27 the last time I counted, and it's a variety of groups. We have the Rhode Island Foundation, we have G Capital, we have obviously the Amalgamated Transit Union, and the lead is the Coalition of Transit Choices. They do a phenomenal job in the state of Rhode Island. Grow Smart Rhode Island. There are a host of people attaching themselves to this question 6.
It doesn't surprise me that organizations like Grow Smart would be pushing this. They always believed in doing economic development in city centers and kind of keeping things together. And I can imagine this hub expansion, this hub creation, is really going to be a shot in the arm for downtown businesses in our capital city.
Yeah, it's about, it's definitely going to have, again, a positive effect on the city of Providence, but we can't be concentrated just on that. We know that's going to be the end result when these hubs are done. It's going to spur some economic growth. It's going to create jobs. Is another thing we can touch on. As we all know, we need to create jobs in the state of Rhode Island. But the other thing that's really important here is that it's actually, I would like to phrase that it's good for Rhode Island as a whole. The majority of our passengers come from outside the urban area of Providence, from Woonsocket, Warwick, and East Providence. And Rhode Island would benefit by these 2 hubs being built, and as well as the city of Providence. It'll be a quality of life and a better public transit system for all.
So I know that there are several different bonds on the ballot this coming November. What are you and your co-workers in your coalition doing to make sure that people focus on question number 6 and view it in a positive light?
Well, the question 6 is in this coalition that we have formed. I've come up with a lot of brainstorming and ideas to promote question 6. So we have billboards that are going to be expressing our value about a better Rhode Island with question 6. We have a whole campaign that we've been working out. I believe on the 24th we're going to have a kickoff event to get it really up and going, to educate people on question 6, the $35 million seed money, to hopefully and eventually get federal dollars matching and maybe up to 80% of whatever we spend on both projects is essential. And the other thing about this is what makes it very unique, Jim, is that if it, and one of the reasons we put it on the ballot is if it gets voted by the Rhode Island citizens, and hopefully it's supported, and we'll be ahead of the curve as far as other states seeking federal Tiger grants or federal dollars for transportation needs. Because it's been approved, we'll be way ahead of them, and it'll give us the ability to acquire that federal dollars to finish the project.
That sounds like a great financial reason why we ought to do it. Securing federal funds that would aid not only in construction jobs and make downtown businesses flourish, but also having a whole system in place for the next century. So tell our viewers a little more about these federal matching funds and what kind of purposes are these federal monies available for, and why do you think the hubs would be looked favorably upon if they passed on the ballot in November?
Well, the federal government comes out with all sorts of federal funding, and one in particular is what they call a Tiger grant. And we've already, because we've got this coalition going, and because we have it on the ballot, we've already received a $650,000 Tiger grant already. Moving forward, again, it's essential that if this passes, it will put us in a very, very good position to acquire federal funding up to 80% of the total cost of the project. And because it's been bond approved by the citizens of Rhode Island, again, gives us the ability to get those federal dollars.
What does the timetable look like? I know sometimes voters approve something, but it takes a period of time. I won't put any other words to it, but it takes some time to get things going. How quickly do you think we'll see the ground broken on a new hub if the voters say yes in November?
When the groundbreaking, I'll be honest with you, Jim, I would say it would be at least a year away. They're looking at possibly this will be a 5-year project to conclude and finish both hubs. This is just the first step in a long process, is getting a bond approved and the $35 million from the state.
So what are the negatives? What are you worried about in terms of what is on voters' minds when they look at question number 6? Is your coalition taking a look at, people coming out against it, or fears or concerns? What do you identify as hurdles you need to overcome to get voters to say yes?
Well, and again, it's a very good question. We have done some polls, and to our surprise, we've had very little negativity regarding the question 6. Our biggest challenge is to reach out to the people that don't either understand our mass transit system or the value of our mass transit system, or don't utilize our mass transit system, and to get them engaged and encourage them to come out and vote for 6. That's our biggest challenge, and I think we can succeed. I think we can get them with a proper campaign, and if we promote this properly, once again, I feel confident that we can achieve a yes on 6.
I know I do a lot of driving as part of my job, and every time I'm stuck in traffic, I wish there were more people taking mass transit. I think there's a lot of reasons why people who don't use mass transit would benefit from mass transit enhancement by voting yes on 6.
Absolutely. Again, people don't understand the economic impact that a public transit system, and a very good one, has on the state of Rhode Island. And a great deal of corporations that look to invest in Rhode Island or build here, one of their criteria is how good is your public transit system. And they look into that to make sure before they make that investment. So there is a lot of positives about public transit, and it's our obligation to teach them.
Have any prominent politicians or candidates weighed in on this issue? Is there general widespread support on this bond issue?
We have had no politicians have opposed it. I will say this is I've had a recent meeting with a Democratic primary winner, Gina Raimondo, who expressed to me her commitment to our public transit, as well as to say that these hubs get going, and get finished.
Okay. So any final words on question number 6? What one thing would you want voters to think about when they get to that question down on the ballot when they are voting in November?
Well, like our message stipulates, vote yes on 6. But it's about improving the quality of life of Rhode Island and Rhode Islanders. It's about improving our public transit system and getting amenities for the 21st century, for the 60,000 rides we give a day and those passengers, and just to improve the overall quality of Rhode Island.
As we sit, taping this on the same week that there's a major action in New York City on climate change, I thank you for your advocacy, not only for your members, but for mass transit generally. And I look forward to having you back on a future show when you can give us an update on what's going on with the transportation hubs.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
This week and this month, we are talking about issues that are appearing on the November ballot. And this evening, we're going to concentrate on some issues related to the building and construction trades. So we have with us the Secretary-Treasurer of the Building and Construction Trades, Scott Duhamel. Scott, thanks for joining us this evening.
Hi, Jim. Thank you.
As I always ask you at the beginning of every show you're on, who are in the building trades? How many members do you have? What organizations are part of the Rhode Island building and construction trades?
Well, we represent 16 different construction trades, ranging from the painters and the glazers to the laborers, iron workers, plumbers, sheet metal workers, boiler makers, on and on. And we represent, I used to proudly say 10,000 members, but I have to be truthful, in the last few years, with the downward trend, we're probably closer to 9,000 members across the state of Rhode Island, men and women.
Yeah. And you come out of the Painters Union yourself?
I'm the Painters Union. I'm business representative of the Painters Union, yes.
Okay. We're going to talk about a couple of different questions on the November ballot. We're going to start from the end instead of the beginning, because I see you have a lapel sticker with yes on 7.
Perfect.
Why don't you start by telling our viewers what is the question number 7 on the November ballot?
Okay, well, I came from a very good kickoff event today, and I just also want to say, if you allow me to editorialize for a second, I'm really happy you're doing this show, because it's often forgotten in the general election how pivotal bond questions are. I think pivotal for the economy of the state and pivotal for the workers we represent. Question 7 is $53 million, clean water, open space, and healthy communities. It's a variety of projects, all of which I've just mentioned. And it's also, there will be $15 million specifically at the Roger Williams Zoo for 2 buildings there. So these are all prevailing wage projects, which is important to the people I represent and also to the contractors that the people we represent work for, who are small, medium, and large Rhode Island-based contractors who do this as union contractors and who pay prevailing wage every day. This allows them an even playing field to bid. Doesn't mean that anybody, necessarily that we get the work or all the work, but we have a much better opportunity to get on this work. So this one is a particularly interesting one, I think, because it is a variety of projects from small to large. And I find this one, I joked today at the kickoff, it's a twofer. It's for our members as much as, and their families, as much as they're looking for opportunities to work. I find this really appeals to the Rhode Island middle class worker. This is about our bay, our parks and recreation, our beautiful zoo, all of which the people I represent, and many other unionized workers in the state really enjoy and want to see be better and better and improved and more improved.
I know our zoo is one of the most widely attended attractions in the whole state of Rhode Island. You indicated about $15 million of this $53 million bond is being dedicated just for projects at the Roger Williams Park Zoo.
And as anyone who's been there over the years has noticed, it's been in a constant state of improvement. One of the reasons I think it's so nationally recognized and well attended. And this will be a series of another 2 buildings that are in disarray that will be improved and will allow them to have new whatever the word is, I can't think of the word, but whatever.
State-of-the-art facilities, perhaps?
Yeah, state-of-the-art, no, but you have new places where people would tour and attend,
Okay.
So.
People are always looking for something new and different when they go to attractions, especially something like a zoo where someone may have gone years ago. So I imagine if they build something new, it's going to attract people to come back who haven't been there in a little while.
I think so, and plus it's an oasis in the midst of Providence. I think it's really, the inner city residents of Providence have really turned out in recent years. It's an attraction to our very own natives. And plus when you're out of state, it's kind of cool to drive someone through the city and say, we're going to go to a beautiful zoo. It's kind of, it's weird for them to picture that it'll be right in the middle of the city. So I think all in all, the zoo has been a great place. It's also a great tourism place. It also provides for our own natives recreation. And of course, selfishly, there could be construction jobs at the end of that.
You mentioned this is a smorgasbord bill. What kinds of groups were at that kickoff meeting today? Who else, other than the building and construction trades, are working on questions?
Well, of course, the Rhode Island DEM is behind this, Department of Environmental Management, a variety of environmental groups, including the fishermen, because it's more about the clean water, benefits them. So I would say there was a large portion of groups that were there.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty varied coalition for question 7 on the ballot. I imagine people who are pushing question 7 might be worried a little bit once voters, after they vote on candidates, then you get to questions. Question 7 is sitting at the end of our ballot.
I think so. That's what makes it worrisome. I think, but like as you said, it has such a variety, a good coalition, much like question 6, a really strong across-the-board coalition who hopefully can reach out to everybody in the state and make them aware and educate. Bond questions, as you well know, have had a high success rate. But you would think this year, and with our current economy, we have to be worried about any of them, especially one that sits down at the end of the ballot.
Yeah, and that's why it's probably so important that you and other groups have come together to do some advocacy.
Let's hope so.
You mentioned question 6. I recently had as a guest Fuzzy Harrington talking from the Transportation Union, talking about the transportation hubs. What is the building and construction trade interest in question number 6?
Well, it's an infrastructure bill, which, a lot of road building, which remember we represent many members who work strictly on the roads. And it's extremely important to Fuzzy and his group, as we know. And I also think, once again, it's one of those double-edged swords. It's extremely important to a lot of the families and the people we represent, many of who use public transportation every day in this state, and also many who are concerned about the environment of this state. This would be yet another way to make a better environment in the state, to help cut down on many of the problems that we have. All in all, it's a wide-ranging bond issue, and there's a chance for matching federal dollars, which could make this a bigger and better project as it goes on. What we see on paper, it could very much be a bigger project. And there will be, once again, in the long run, this would be a series of a lot of smaller projects that amount into one, because the way they'll phase these things. Infrastructure is not often done in one big kick because you can't upset the whole city and state when you rip apart a road or an area. So it gets done in phased. So it would be ongoing for a number of years once it starts, which would provide jobs for a number of years.
You mentioned that families are interested in mass transit and your members. One number that stuck out in my mind when Fuzzy was on the show was talking about how RIPTA provides 20 million rides a year to Rhode Island, over 20 million rides a year to Rhode Islanders. So there's plenty of union members and other working people who are using RIPTA on a regular basis, not only to get to work, but to see family and go downtown and for other reasons. Without
a doubt, I'm personally very aware of this. I represent in the Painters Union a lot of members from the Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls area. Now, of course, in the building trades, we almost insist you must have a car will travel because you could be shifted from a job site to a job site. But I happen to know very personally that many of their family members get to work daily through the transit system. Many of my inner city members, that is the way that they find their way to make a living, on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. So I'm very aware of how important this is.
So it's not only an issue about getting jobs for your members, but it's a quality of life issue for all working people.
Once again, much like question 7, I think it's a very important quality of life issue. I think it should appeal. I think our problem educating Rhode Islanders is, once again, getting out to the suburbs in the farther regions of our state who don't always recognize the bus system and how important it is. Although there's bus systems everywhere, it seems to be at its greatest, in Providence and a little bit outward. So what worries me on that question is that I hope we convince those people who are living in beautiful East Greenwich or Barrington who haven't seen a bus in a while, or maybe not know what a bus is. I hope we get to the point where they realize how important this is for our state and for the jobs it would create and for the changes it would make to make an efficient transit system that puts more people than, as you just said, than anybody realizes go to work daily, make their livelihoods by getting on and off those buses.
I think question 6 and question 7 are issues related to our economic development as well. It's about making our state more attractive to visitors. It's about making the transportation system more efficient so businesses can grow, particularly in the inner city. And that's why support of these 2 bond questions are so critical.
I think so, and I think that's what I hope will appeal to those not so intricately involved with the day-to-day workings of the transit system, that they see that this really is a statewide issue too, for exactly the reasons you say. The more efficient a state is, the better it moves, the better it attracts business, the better it attracts tourism.
And that's it for this week's edition of Labor Vision. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.